Good evening, my friends and extended family. Um, Today we'll continue on with the conspiracy theories. So, I guess because the majority of my channel is adoptees, and there's some people who are involved in the drunk driving thing. Well, what do we have there, right? We have the ability to take children under the premise of altruism and what are people going to say? We in Canada, anyways, have developed a pariah system and bastardizing of white culture, if you want to put it that way. So as the majority of us know, Christianity claims that red wine is the blood of Christ. Once transmuted in their church, um, to be taken as communion, holy sacrament. Now, there's no denying that alcohol um, is a mind-altering substance. Uh, but how does it alter the mind? Does it give you more access to the spiritual or less? And I think it's pretty plain that it's less. It fogs the thinking. Um, it creates apathy, creates violence, stupidity. It uninhibits. It creates a lack of judgment. It affects judgment. So, and then, I find it humorous that prohibition was a sort of a side note in history. World War One, World War Two were big events, but they kind of brush over uh, prohibition as if it wasn't such a big deal. Well, what did we have there? We had a civil war, and also we had gangsters vying for control of the government through bribery and corruption. So, that being said, does it not stand to reason that the people who took over in America are alcohol dealers? A lot, we talk about the Rothschilds and the banking dynasties, all these things. We don't hear a lot about big tobacco. We hear it as a name, but there's no faces to that. We look at the Forbes 500. Do you see a lot of big tobacco people on there? I don't really think so. I can't point someone out and say, well, that's the face of tobacco. Because ultimately, I would think big tobacco and alcohol would be competing, if not over and above the royal families. So that's something to think about. And it's hard because we're in it. I mean, you certainly don't put cigarettes and tobacco on the same playing field as heroin, and yet it's just as addictive and arguably more toxic than heroin, if heroin was administered cleanly, um, or opium. So things to think about there. Now, with the adoption, well, w- the easiest way for myself to tie this in to a conspiracy theory is that is it Sun Tzu or Lao Tzu who wrote Art of War? But the Art of War basically depicts the bloodless battle as breaking the spirit, breaking the family. You break the spirit and you break the family bond of a people, there's nothing left. You know, even our own Prime Minister, Trudeau, who's an absolute idiot, will sit there and tell you that we have no culture. Well, I believe that's because our culture's been kicked out of the schools, because it might offend some of our immigrants. God, our God, the Christian God, if you want to, I don't want to say I'm a Christian anymore. I don't necessarily subscribe to this Christian Zionism. You know, I don't necessarily buy into it. Not as it is today. You know, it's the dogma has turned it into something else. You know, I often feel that these messiahs, these gurus, they were drops in a pond, and as those ripples spread out, they disperse slowly and they lose concentration, right? So as it goes, I mean, you know, Islam, I think, is showing itself to be what's the word? A more brutal force in the world. You know, there's a huge amount of Muslims, and they're very warlike religion. And it's hard to compete with something like that with Christianity when you have a turn the other cheek motto. So, yeah, when we talk about conspiracy theories, I mean, moon landings, this, that, the other thing, I mean, propaganda and lies for the most part, but we rarely land on very important current issues that we're all well aware of, and yet we cannot see them because we've just been indoctrinated into it, and we've come to know it as a normalcy. I remember having bearded dragons. I was breeding dragons for a while, and there was something I noticed about them in their little communities. If I fed them live food, i.e. mice or crickets, they would gobble them up. But if some of those crickets or mice managed to hide and make it through the night, the dragons seemed to ignore them the next day. I at one point, you know, I'd fed the dragons, and I noticed there was a little hole under one of the logs, and I picked up the log. One of the mice had actually gotten away and had been living in there for a couple weeks with the dragons. You know, and same with crickets. They'd come out at night and nibble away. And it was a danger with the babies because they could come out and nibble on the dragons. And I've heard of cases where crickets had come out and actually eaten eyelids, eaten pieces of the dragon. Um, so, I mean, that's something to think about. There's a lot to be learned from animals. So I'll give you another example. So if we're paying attention in the world and life, and we can get off our high horse like we're somehow better than animals, right? We may be a higher intellect, we may be divine creatures, and yet we still inhabit an animal form that follows some laws of nature, like the animals. So we can look to those animals who are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're following their natures here in this realm. We are not. But again, here's the example. I was living with a girlfriend of mine when I was about 19 years old, and she had this great big orange cat with no tail. Awesome cat. It was named Tanzania. And anyways, we were sitting there in Edmonton and sitting in the yard, and the cat came along with a mouse, and the mouse had been killed. And then it came along with one of the babies, and it had injured the baby in bringing it as a gift, I guess, is what these cats do. But eventually it brought one little tiny mouse that was just about yay big, and it was perfectly round. And I don't even think it was a mouse. I think it was a shrew, actually. It looked like a tiny puffy kangaroo is what it looked like. It was just the cutest little thing you could ever imagine. And the girlfriend at the time was kind of an odd duck, and she was breeding gerbils. I'm not even going to guess why, but when I met her, she was breeding gerbils. And anyways, the gerbils had one of the gerbil moms had a little kitten, a little litter of these little tiny gerbils that were about the same size as this little mouse. Well, I'm adopted. Adoption is natural. It's good. It's been reinforced in my mind at 19 years old. It's normal. Adoption is normal. It's nature. So I put the little mouse in with the other babies. Why wouldn't that gerbil mom take care of that little thing that looked just like its babies almost? Well, it lasted about 2 seconds, and then the mom tore it to shreds. And I was shocked. I was shocked. But should I have been shocked? That's a good question, don't you think? So, needless to say, we need to pay attention to the world around us. It's trying to tell us things about our nature. It's trying to tell us that things about the nature in which we share the planet. Well, we go about our business trying to destroy our own habitat and our own home. So, what is the conspiracy? Well, it's control, it's power. It's the seven deadly sins run amok. And as people move through their lives and they gain power, control, deception, what is the point? What is the point of it all? Well, it's creation and destruction. You know, when it boils right down to it, it's our conflicting natures with our spirits, which reside within us. Yeah. Anyways, that's sort of where things start to make sense for me. Whereas I need to understand the nature of myself and try to align myself with that nature if I'm going to understand what's been done to me via this society, via corruption, etc. And to do that, well, then we have to get back to what's natural for us. I'll give you another interesting example. I was having a conversation with a fella, and this was around the time I'd given up drinking dairy and eating dairy. And we were chatting away, and I said to him, I said, well, listen, say for example, you're walking, you're lost in nature, and you're becoming thirsty. You haven't drank in a day or two, and you're dehydrated and you need liquid or sustenance of some sort. And you come into a clearing, and there, lo and behold, is a woman and a cow. Both of them with their teats out, dripping milk. Well, as a woman or a man, at what point in mankind did we decide, no, we'll leave the breast milk from our human woman and we'll drink from that huge behemoth cow, its milk? I don't know. I don't know. Doesn't seem quite, you know, I don't look at an udder and think, wow, I'd really like to put my mouth around that and suckle on it. And I can tell you, when it comes to the woman, I have a different opinion. So there's another one. But the world is full of these incongruities, these full of these paradoxes, full of these deceptions that we've been led into. I'm going to give you one more. So this is one that I really struggle with when it comes to trying to join a spiritual group. Okay, and I've struggled with this with Christians, with AA people, with all sorts. So they're all, you know, we go to church, we do our things, and as long as life is going good for them, well, they're great Christians, they're great AA people, whatever it may be. But something happens to their relative, or their, say for the sake of argument, so we can all kind of get on board with this, something terrible happens to their child, and their child is taken from them prematurely, or what they feel is prematurely. Well, is that not part of God's plan? What kind of God would take a child? Well, see, I guess the problem with that is that there even in marriage vows, it's for better or worse. We acknowledge that there may be good times and there may be bad times, but they will both come about. That is life. Now, if we are faithful Christians, we're faithful of whatever religion or religious sect we want to pray to or prescribe to, and we believe in a nirvana, a heaven, a Shambhala, what you call it, whatever you want to call it, then shouldn't we be happy for our child to have been able to go earlier than us? An innocent little child. Why would they not go to this place? Are they sinners? They can hardly be blamed for anything as children. You know, maybe stealing a cookie here or there, you know, without repenting. But at the same token, I think, you know, we have to accept that, you know, there's going to be peace for these innocents. At least that's our hope. And I mean, I think that's our faith. And yet, if it happens to you, not you, but the grand you, the religious hypocrite that I'm talking about here, well, now all of a sudden, why would God take my child? I mean, you know, of course, I mean, at first there's grief and this and that and the other, but if you really believe in God, and you really believe in the spiritual realm, well, can you not see that leaving the carnal realm for the spiritual is better? So that's just another example, I guess. And you know, it's just these things I see all the time, and I just shake my head. You know, I don't get all busted up when people pass away. I am secretly maybe a little bit envious of them. I do not believe in killing myself. I believe I'm here for a reason. And maybe it's just a payoff karma. Maybe this is a celestial jail of some sort. Who knows? But at the same token, in my youth, I had a divine experience, whereas I was told very specifically the only rule is to never kill yourself. So I've tried to obviously go with that. And I haven't tried to kill myself. I subconsciously may have tried to do myself in with booze and drugs and possibly women and poor driving, but consciously I've never made that leap. So anyways, as far as I'm concerned, the conspiracy theories, nothing will ever get done unless people do some conspiring. And I intend to do some conspiring of my own to help combat the adoption agencies, to help combat the corruption surrounding adoption. And this is where I plan to go. And obviously, I'm going to need some more education. I'm going to need to do some networking, although I'm introverted by nature. And I'm going to have to talk with some peoples. And I'm going to have to conspire and collaborate with those peoples to try and push this movement in that direction. Um, Adoptees taking control of adoptees. I think that's the way it should be, because no one else seems to understand us besides us. So I sure as heck don't want Trudeau making decisions for us adoptees anymore. I don't want any of the government making our decisions for us anymore at all. And I would like reprieve from these governmental retards so that we can get our lives back on track and possibly form some sort of community of our own in a larger international sort of scheme. Well, scheme doesn't sound quite right, but a larger international sort of organization of adoptees. And we have enough organizations like AA that have set down some good ground rules and whatnot to keep things as corruption free as they possibly can. Now, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because your AA group is corrupt or it stinks or this or that. And I know there's a lot of groups that have gone away from the original, ideologies and spiritual portions of it. But at the same token, it was a well thought out thing at the time, and it does provide a cure that isn't found in most other places. So, anyways, that's my 22 minutes. I'm trying to shorten these up a little bit. So just a little basic understanding of where I'm coming from. That there's the little things that are not mainstream that we don't talk about. But it's these things that we know of every day that we need to look at a little bit more closely, scratch the surface a bit, and ask some questions because it's invisible until we grab onto it and really look at it, or step away from it and have a look from another angle and another perspective. Um, you know, Criticize yourself, judge yourself, find out who you are, not who the world has tried to tell you you are. Know thyself. I mean, right back to the Oracle of Delphi. Know thyself, and to thine own self be true. And that's what I'm trying to do because I can't be true to Canada anymore because Canada has not been true to me. They've been a bunch of filthy liars and they're drug dealers and they're drugging children, us adoptees, by putting us in some of these homes, you know. So, thank you. I have another video to do tonight because I've been slacking off. I'm falling behind. So I'm going to do a video following this one about some other things. So we'll get at that. So thank you all, and a big thank you to my dearest friend in Vegas. Thanks to her, Christmas came a bit early this year. I felt like a little kid again, and that was wonderful. My dear love is coming back from Turkey here right away. My other dear friend has been helping me and is probably going to provide me a little bit better space. And it'll be good to have her. She's very nurturing, and I've known her for a long time, and she's very caring as well. So she's going to help me with some stuff. But thanks. I had a great conversation with my friend Lisa today, and another great conversation with Hi Hello the other day. 25-year-old adoptee with some awesome insight on the world, on life, and yet still, I mean, at a younger age, looking for the answers. Um, for what was done to her. So, my dear friend from The Hague as well, my new friends who have opened my eyes a little bit to in vitro, our brothers and sisters over there that, are brought into the world in less than normal situation, uh, which provides those people a lot of challenges and hurdles to overcome. And again, great thanks to the Celtic Counseling Lady, a great voice for adoption over in Ireland. Nancy Verrier, for her work that she did on the birth, was it the birth bond or the primal wound? The primal wound. I like to big shout out to Gabor Mate, Canadian psychologist here in Canada, who's done great work in exposing the trauma that adoptees face and helping link some of the addiction problems and other problems that we face in our lives. Um, just so many people, so many awesome people, and I'm gonna have to do a video one day and just really try and trace my path through the information, for you guys who kind of want to know where I got this information, how I put it together, because I don't hear a ton of people talking about what I'm talking about, and I don't necessarily know what I'm saying anymore. So I'm just gonna let you guys go. But thanks again. I love you all, and I'll put another video, maybe not tonight, but right away. So uh, love you all. You're becoming my family. I look to you for your insights. They always mean a lot. And David, thank you always. I enjoy having more and more men come here because there's been a lot of talk that there's more women who are adopted, but I don't believe that to be true. I think maybe men are just expected to suck it up more maybe than women, as far as their emotions go. I don't want to, take anything away from women. It's horrible for both parties, but both of the genders have some, a few different struggles that they have to deal with. And I think it's very important that we never forget that, first and foremost, we're adoptees, um, and we need to look after each other, and we can't be playing that gender politics bullshit that's going on in the world with our brother and sister adoptees. So I love you all, and I know we've all suffered in our own ways, and we need to be able to get it out and talk about it for us to grow. It's made a huge difference in my life over the last couple of years of doing these videos for you guys, and I'm just, overall the comments are very helpful, very supportive, very positive. And I know I have to talk about some very negative topics, and occasionally I do see people coming on here and saying horrible things to me, that I should have been aborted, this, that, and the other, but they got pain too, right? So anyways, good night, and I'll talk to you soon, I hope.